Hello everyone, my name is Craig Adler. I'm a retired certified financial planner. I'm also sometimes known as the Angry Financial Planner. For the last 2 years, I have done everything possible to reduce my expenses as low as they possibly could go. I essentially lived my life as a minimalist. In just a minute, I'm going to share with you how much money I've spent over that 2-year time period. But I also want you to understand what was the purpose of creating this video, but more importantly, what I actually have learned from this experience. So the main purpose of the video is this. In the world of financial planning, there are many very controversial topics. One topic that's incredibly controversial is, can someone live exclusively off of their Social Security benefit during their retirement years? The main purpose of this video was I wanted to be able to answer that question, but I wanted to do it empirically. I didn't want to provide you a theoretical answer. So what I decided to do was I was going to reduce my expenses as low as I possibly could for this 2-year time period. I would then compare that to a typical Social Security benefit. That would not only allow me to answer the question, but more importantly, to explain the results. So what I want to do next is first just show you what those annual expenses came to, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the detail of each individual expense category, and then we'll go ahead and answer the question, is it possible to live 100% off of Social Security during our retirement years? So these were my expenses during this 2-year tracking period. The number that you're looking at is an annual expense, and the number in parentheses is a monthly expense. So my annual expense for maintaining my home was $3,500. The second expense was my utilities. My utilities came to $2,800 on an annual expense. My auto expense was $1,250. My food expense, which also included dining out, was $2,100 per year. And the final expense was $2,500 for travel and entertainment. So when we total all of these expenses together, my cash flow on average for each of these 2 years was slightly more than $12,000. Now, there's 2 other things though I need to share with you. When I started this experiment, I was an employee, so I was actually receiving my health benefits from my employer. By the end of this project, I was now working as an independent contractor. So my monthly healthcare costs are now averaging about $500 a month. So that would be an additional $6,000 a year. Also, during this tracking period, I didn't have to replace my roof. My air conditioner didn't go out. I didn't change any of my appliances. I know those expenses are going to happen sooner or later. So what I also have set aside was an additional $500 per month or $6,000 per year. So my estimated total cash flow would be right around $24,000 on an annual basis. Now what I want to go through is what were some of the main drivers behind these individual expenses. So let me start with my housing costs, which were incredibly low at $3,500. So I have lived in the same house, or I've owned the same house since 2001. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Homes when I moved here were incredibly inexpensive, $125,000. My house is now paid for. That $3,500 expense, 75% of that was property taxes, insurance, which is relatively low in Arizona. We don't have too many natural disasters, and a relatively small HOA fee. My second expense of $2,800, let me make sure that's correct. Yes, $2,800 was for my utilities. That really didn't change very much during the tracking period. I think the only thing I've done to keep that low, but I've always done this, is my monthly cost for my phone and my internet is $80 a month. And I know some people spend 3 to 4 times that a month on a monthly basis. But my total utilities, $2,800. It worked out to about $50 for water and trash collection, $80 for internet and my phone, and then about an additional $100 per month for electricity, much higher in the summer, much lower in the winter. My next expense, $1,200 for automobile cost. I am driving a car that is 18 years old. It's also fully paid for. I only have liability insurance on that car. The other thing I did during this tracking period is I probably reduced my transportation costs by over half because I just started riding my bike far more frequently during this tracking period than I did before. My next expense was for food. Now this one changed significantly. I ended up spending $2,100 on average per year. That was all food costs, including dining out. Now, I made some major changes. One, I used to go to one grocery store. I would buy whatever I want. I bought a lot of convenience and processed foods. During this tracking period, I was going to about 2 to 3 different grocery stores every week. I was paying attention to the ads. I was clipping coupons. I was looking at the discontinued rack. And I also leaned towards a vegetarian diet, high in like pasta, rice, and bread. So I was able to keep my food costs very low. I also, before the tracking period, was probably dining out maybe 2 to 3 times a week. If I was dining out once a month during this tracking period, that was also a major change. So $2,100 was my annual food cost. The final cost that I want to look at was travel and entertainment. That came to $2,500 on an annual basis. What I want to share with you is this. I actually ended up traveling far more during the tracking period than I was before. I was traveling more, but I was spending significantly less money. Now, why was that happening? Let me explain this to you. What I was doing during the tracking period, I would pick out 4 or 5 areas that I wanted to live at or travel to. I would then try to find someone that was either subletting an apartment or renting a room, and then I would go stay there for about a month. The major change was this: no more air travel, no more hotels, no more rental cars. By traveling without those conveniences, I was able to travel 3 to 4 times as much, probably even more frequently than that, at a much lower cost. So that was the major change behind that number. So once again, adding in those extra $12,000 for healthcare and repairs and maintenance that really didn't take place during the tracking period, I am looking at about $24,000 a year to maintain my lifestyle during this minimalistic 2-year time period. Now what I want to do is answer the question, can I live exclusively off of Social Security? Well, I think the answer to that question for me is absolutely yes. But what I really want to do is be able to answer this question for you. And please, in the comments, feel free. If you disagree with these assumptions that I made, I would like to hear your perspective as well. But here is what I would say. There are going to be some key drivers to your ability to live exclusively off of Social Security. Driver number 1 is this: what part of the country do you live in? If you live in a high-cost part of the country, if you live in La Jolla, if you live in Manhattan overlooking Central Park, it's never going to work. Remember, I live in Phoenix, which is a relatively low-cost city, and my home is fully paid for. So if you want to be able to live exclusively off of Social Security, one key is going to be this: you're going to probably want to live in a low to moderate part of the country and most likely have a fully paid for house. Let me add this. I know that many parts of the country, even real estate taxes today in a moderate cost part of the country can be $10,000 to $12,000 a year. Well, if you have half of your Social Security benefit going to real estate taxes, that also is not going to work. Once again, Phoenix, Arizona, where I live, incredibly low property taxes. The second point I would want to make would be this, and that would be automobile expenses. Once again, my car is fully paid for and I have no other debt. You could probably cover a car payment with your Social Security benefit and still live off of the remaining amount. However, if you're giving up 25% of your Social Security benefit just for the monthly payment on that car plus the additional cost, in my opinion, that is going to make that incredibly difficult. And then the last comment I would make is how you control and how you manage your discretionary expenses. Like I said, I gave up almost completely all dining out. I also gave up things like going to a play, going to a movie, going to a sporting event. I was probably doing that about 2 times a month before the tracking period. I gave all of that up. And I also, as I mentioned earlier, I changed the way I traveled. The final point that I would want to make is this: if you are looking to live 100% off of Social Security, and this is not covered in most other videos, these are critical facts. Fact number 1 is this: when do you claim or when do you start your Social Security benefit? For many people, the difference between the lowest benefit at age 62 versus the highest benefit at age 70 can be $1,600 a month. Well, $1,600 a month is $19,000 a year. I would say to you, if you are looking to live exclusively off of Social Security, you probably want to do everything possible to delay that benefit as long as you possibly can. The final point that I'm going to make, if you want to live 100% off of Social Security, is your marital status is also really important. It's much easier to live off of 2 Social Security benefits than it is to live off of 1, and that will have a major impact as well. The final question that I'd like to address just briefly is this. So I answered the question, can you live exclusively off of Social Security? And I believe if you meet those criteria, the answer to that question is absolutely, definitively going to be yes. I think what some people are going to be saying to themselves is, would you want to live this type of lifestyle? And I realize many people would say no. Here's what I'm going to share with you. 1, I found by being more cognizant of what I was eating, I was eating healthier, I was eating better, I was riding my bike more, I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the travel experience without the airline travel, without the hotels, without the rental car. I just found that to be a more engaging type of travel experience, and it was much, much lower cost. Did I miss dining out? Did I miss some of those entertainment activities? Absolutely I did. But that really wasn't a terrible sacrifice to be able to answer the question that, yes, I could live exclusively off of my Social Security benefit. And I believe if you are living in a relatively low cost part of the country, debt-free, you could probably answer the question in the same way. I hope you found this video beneficial and helpful. If you did, please support the channel by subscribing. And remember, when it comes to our money, it is always better to be educated than angry.